Hello, guys and dolls. Welcome back to Conversations with Xalea. I'm your host, Xalea Lorraine. Today, I'm reviewing a movie I've grown up with that also serves as a swan song to the late Bernie Mac titled Soul Men. The movie focuses on two ex-bandmates who reunite after 3 decades of estrangement to partake in a tribute concert slash funeral of their former bandmate Marcus Hicks, while also serving as a love letter and tribute to Memphis Soul. I will recap Soul Men to the best of my memory and by the end give my final thoughts on the movie and what I think of it now. Since there will be discussions of the plot and certain plot points, expect spoilers if you view this video. But alas, let's get into the main event. The movie begins with performance chatter before the narrator, played by American Idol Randy Jackson, narrates the backstory of Marcus Hicks and The Real Deal, which was a 1960s fictitious music group consisting of three childhood friends: Marcus Hicks, played by John Legend, Floyd Henderson, Bernie Mac, and Lewis Hines, Samuelljackson. The group are then shown performing I'm Your Puppet, a real song from the 1960s. Most of the songs featured slash performed in the movie are covers of well-known Memphis Soul hits as a tribute to the Memphis Soul music scene, which, in comparison to the Detroit music scene, was a lot more raw and grittier. We then get a montage of the group's success and fame from meeting Elvis at the White House to witnessing the Ali Foreman fight. Eventually, Marcus leaves the group for a successful solo career, kicked off with a concert at MSG of him dressed up in a I forgot the name of the band, Funkadelic-esque outfit, and cutting to a brief 80s scene of Marcus dressed up like a mix of Prince and Cameo, while we see a montage of his achievements and awards. Meanwhile, Floyd and Louis continue on as a duo called Henderson Hines slash The Real Deal, only becoming one-hit wonders with their one hit Walking Apart before splitting up because of creative differences, though we will find out the real reason they split up later on. The duo wind up taking different paths in life. Louis becomes a jailbird, going to jail for a botched robbery, and Floyd parlaying into a successful career as a car wash salesman, which we're shown of ad his that uses a lot of heavy, suggestive content and double entendres. In the present day, Floyd is now a grumpy middle-aged man being driven by his nephew Damon and his rowdy ass kids to the retirement home Floyd will reside at. After some small chat with Damon, who he transferred his business to in regards to pretty much everything, he Damon asked Floyd to say goodbye to his wife and kids, and Floyd responds by saying, in true Bernie style, F those kids. Floyd has it miserable at the retirement home, with his only luck being making soup with a well-endowed neighbor, portrayed by Vanessa Rio, who's a real-life adult film movie star, by the way, which that's nothing to shame someone for. But back to the story. After a very cringy doctor's office scene, Floyd plans on offing himself when he watches a news report about his ex-bandmate Marcus, who died of a heart attack while performing at a concert in Sweden. We then cut to Louis working at his mechanic job, who answers a phone call from Danny in regards to reuniting with Floyd for Marcus's funeral concert, which he declined. So Floyd decides to visit Louis to his apartment to convince him to do the show, only for Louis to knock him out. The two then get into an argument about the reunion and cash split up, namely with Louis wanting to split it 60-40 instead of 50-50, which we are reserved some as Bernie's one-liners of dialogue. Seeing the improbability of the duo reuniting, Danny, played by the dude from Will and Grace, recruits an intern named Philip, who's also a big Real Deal fan, to the point he has an episode of them performing on Soul Train where they perform 3 songs. He pretty much hires them to pretty much get them to the concert, essentially. Meanwhile, Floyd and Louie are on the road on their way to the impromptu gig in Flagstaff, Arizona at a hotel, which I don't know how the heck Floyd was able to book these gigs in time. One of their first road trip hijinks is Floyd firing a gun while driving, which causes Louis to retort NRA, Negroes Remedial Association, which remedial is in place of the R word, the more offensive R word. After a gig in Flagstaff performing Hold On, I'm Coming by Sam and Dave, everything goes very off the rails. First, one of the patrons, a drunk dude, keeps coming onto the stage only to be kicked off every time he popped in. Then the button in Floyd's pants pop off, striking a biker patron. But the worst is when Louis states that what the cause of their falling out and the group flaring up was Floyd sleeping with his woman Odetta, who was their backup singer. And that revelation pretty much ends the concert prematurely. Back on the road, Floyd and Louis discuss what occurred last night in regards to Odetta, which Louis is still big mad over. You see, Louis had a relationship with a woman named Odetta, but Odetta left him for Floyd because of his addiction. And she wound up eventually leaving Floyd and divorcing him. In their next gig in Texas, they perform at some hoedown or country club where Floyd encounters and sleeps with Rosalie in a very cringy scene. Just check it out and watch it. There'll be tons of cringy scenes in this movie. The next morning, they're outside their hotel rooms with their respective flings who turn out to be mother and daughter, which had to be embarrassing. As the duo escape from Rosalie's husband, she and her daughter Chastity have an argument where Rosalie hypocritically calls out her daughter for shaming the family by sleeping with Louis, even though she literally had a fling with Floyd. Parental hypocrisy, I tell you. After getting scammed out of their money during their trip, Floyd contacts Philip to help them with money, which Philip agrees, unsurprisingly. They make a stop at Oklahoma to visit Odetta to bury the hatchet, but when Floyd knocks on the door, he counters Lester, a wannabe rapper and the boyfriend of Cleo, Odetta's daughter, who calls for Cleo, who tells him that Odetta died the previous winter of an illness. Learning of Cleo's existence causes Floyd to snoop around her things and found a license listing her date of birth to see if his daughter. During the discussion with Louis, they recognize a bass line from one of the records, which is being sampled for a song by Lester and his producer friends Zigzag and Bebe. When Louis and Floyd confront Lester about it, Lester and his friends pretty much disrespect him, and they get into a big argument about the sample, which is broken up by Cleo, who, after calling them out, pretty much decides to offer them a place to stay. Then the next scene, we're shown Floyd playing Comfort Me by Carla Thomas on the piano, since that was Odetta's favorite song. And Floyd and Cleo pretty much bond over Odetta, with Cleo stating how performing with them was the best times of Odetta's life. While Louis pretty much witnesses Lester's doing some suspicious dealings, if you catch my drift. When Floyd offers Cleo a chance to join them in Memphis, she declines, and I'm sorry about that from earlier. At night in the guest room, Louis chastises Floyd over his offer to Cleo and pretty much winds up leaving to sleep somewhere else after Floyd, under the influence of his meds, try to cuddle with him. As he tries to find another place to sleep, Louis hears Cleo singing the song that Floyd played earlier, which impresses Louis. The next morning, he winds up answering Philip's phone call and pretty much tells him to meet up with them at Memphis, much to Philip's enjoyment. When Floyd and Louis catch Cleo outside smoking with a black eye, they realize that Lester is also abusive, and Louis decides to handle him by pretty much beating the crap out of him and breaking his arm, and also stealing the drug money that he had in his drawers just so they could use for gas. When the trio arrive in Memphis, we get a voice-only introduction to the late Isaac Hayes, welcoming Henderson and Hines to the city, while also showcasing landmarks such as the Laredo Motel, which is the motel where Dr. MLK was unalived, and the Peabody, where they meet up with Philip and try to book a room there. Philip is the only person that's able to book rooms for them since Floyd still owes money from damages at a wild party in the 70s that apparently was so wild that one of the things that went on in the party was Sly Stone and Bootsy Collins bringing a fire eater and also a snake. And Louis' card containing a very salacious NSFW image. Later that evening, the trio meet up with the old Becky band consisting of well-known soul musicians such as Fathead, who used to work with Ray Charles, Al Cawley, one of the members of the Barkays, and Millie Jackson, who as Claudette, who pretty much storms off after slapping Floyd over the incident of the past. And since Claudette was their backup dance singer, they need a replacement in which they find one in Cleo, which they were apprehensive about until they brought up the fact Cleo being Odetta's daughter. And at the House of Blues nightclub with Isaac and Philip in attendance, they performed Do Your Thing, which was a well-known song of Isaac Hayes. Unbeknownst to the trio, Lester and his hip-hop buddies, they somehow followed them to Memphis, and they wound up holding Philip hostage under the ruse that he was a big fan of The Real Deal. After the performance, Floyd decides to pretty much declare himself as Cleo's dad, but Cleo tells him right away that Floyd couldn't be his, but rather Louis, based on her last clue in regards to royalties, because everything she stated about, such as him probably being dead and her getting used to get money from him, but until it stopped because of royalties, they all point to Louis. And I should know that I didn't mention this earlier, but earlier in the movie, during the big argument at the apartment, Louis stated that he doesn't earn any royalties because he lost them in a poker game, revealing that also revealed that Odetta pretty much messed around with Louis while she was married to Floyd. Angered, Floyd pretty much goes to Louis' room and they get into a physical altercation with trashing the whole room in the process and catching the attention of the hotel staff and Cleo, who winds up storming off, catching Lester's attention in the process. And as the duo try to chase after Cleo to explain things, Lester confronts them, which leads to him being run over by Floyd's car, the Mothership. Floyd and Louis, they wind up in jail with Floyd bitterly lamenting over their situation. Floyd eventually gets cleared and released from jail, while Louis remains in jail for several parole violations, including use of a gun, much disregard of Floyd, who gives Louis Cleo's phone number and curses him off. But wait, there's more. Floyd eventually has a change of heart upon finding out that Louis has health problems, which was hinted at earlier in several scenes of the movie, which leads to Floyd holding the redhead prison guard hostage and breaking Louis out of jail, which means they're on the run. Floyd and Louis, while on the run, they decided to ditch the Mothership and steal Lester's car to go to the Apollo. But then he eventually gets wind of their antics, which leads to him contacting Philip, who was in the trunk of the car, to pretty much tell them that they're off the show, which devastates Floyd, though Louis convinced them to go to the show anyways, which they do make it a show, and they want to reconnect. Though they have to hide from the police, who's all pretty much going to find them. And Cleo winds up coming back after Louis contacted her in jail, which they want to make an amends with her. And seeing as that the police is on their tail, they decide to hide in Marcus' piano-shaped coffin. And while in the coffin, they pretty much discuss how pretty much bad off Marcus, saying how he pretty much caused some of the conflicts of the band, including stealing Louis' watch and stuff, and how it was horrible of him to go solo. And the duo, they eventually pop up at the coffin, and they decided to perform. And since they're only allowed to perform one song, the one song question they wanted performing, which also features Cleo, is their one biggest hit, Walk in the Park. And we get an epilogue, a subtitled epilogue, where Floyd and Louis, they pretty much perform together with Cleo after serving their time in jail, and Philip becomes their manager, and after some montage of Bernie Mac and Isaac Hayes, it's the end of the movie. Now, here's my final thoughts. As a kid, when I was younger, I enjoyed this movie because it featured a lot of all-stars like Bernie Mac, Isaac Hayes, and Samuel Jackson. And the jokes, to me, were funny at the time. But now that I'm older, the movie, while it's a good movie, it comes across as cringy to me. Like, almost everything about the movie is cringy. And apparently, the humor was supposed to be, there were supposed to be a lot more raunchy scenes or a lot more raunchy humor. But it was toned down out of respect for Bernie's family, which is understandable. And then with regards to the certain plot holes, there are a lot of plot holes in the movie. Like, how was Claude able to book all those gigs despite them only having a few days left to pretty much perform at the Apollo? That's another plot hole. But all in all, if I were to watch this movie, I would watch it to be nostalgic, not because of a good movie. And it's a very fitting swan song for both Bernie Mac and Isaac Hayes. May these two men continue to rest in peace. I hope you enjoyed this review. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on this video and other videos and channel. Be a nicer person. Treat people with kindness. And until then, bye-bye.